And now we will return to our presentation number 4. The title of presentation, Connection in the Classroom, and our presenter, Mary Irene Pennock. Mary Irene Pennock, author of the book Connection in the Classroom, Education for Humanity, editor for over 20 books and several hundred articles for various publications, and recipient of the 2022 Empire State Excellence in Teaching Award. Holds masters in English and Communication and bachelor in music education from New York Post-Dem. She has taught career and technical education, English language arts for over 20 years, composition at Jefferson Community College, and has conducted several professional development sessions for teachers and school administrators. Mary has expertise teaching collaboration and team building strategies for result and high quality productivity and meaningful working relationships. Having conducted hundreds of connection seminars, she has integrated people from diverse ages and backgrounds to place of mutual respect, understanding, and warm-hearted friendship. Please welcome Mary Pennock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oksana, and everyone for such a very warm welcome. And thank you, Irene, for inviting me to speak today. It's a huge honor to be among such distinguished colleagues, and I greatly respect and admire all the work that Irene does. And special thanks to Kathy Perello. She's been absolutely wonderful, helping me prepare for this presentation. So thank you so much. The presentations have been fascinating, inspiring, and I look forward to each and every one and throughout the rest of today. So again, my topic is connection in the classroom, education for humanity. This is education for everyone, not just for the classroom. What I'm seeing is that, and I know we all see this, that education is in crisis. It has been. The world is in crisis. What I'm noticing in students is that they have a lack of empathy, no hope, and 5 to 10 years from now, they don't think that they will be here. They don't think the planet will be here, that we won't exist. Not only that, students don't know how to relate to each other in a meaningful way, and they don't care to. So after years of success with this method, knowing a little of the research that I developed along with a collaborative group of film producers, yoga instructors, college professors, very eclectic group, very much like Irene. I knew a little of the research. I delved into the science that backs up what I already knew to be effective so that I could present it effectively to educators and all facets of society. I was also compelled to bring this method to as many students as possible because I saw the transformation that occurred in every student. It is a method that teachers can readily implement. It is an empirically proven method. I know colleagues from LA to New York City, Toronto to Florida, many other continents and countries who have used parts of this method with resounding success. These are some of the connection sessions that I've conducted personally at Bowen Technical Center where I teach. I've conducted professional development, over 100 sessions. The director was so impressed that it did become part of the curriculum at our CTE Center. JCC Continuing Education, Happiness Course, a leadership group at Hillel at Hamilton College, Limud, Jewish focused conferences in Canada, and special professional development for teachers at Temple Sinai, and then several other conferences in the United States. This is an integral approach, integrating mind, body, heart, and soul. Students need to be engaged on all levels in order to be successful, in order to be fully human, to experience a full human qualities of existence. And as a result of this integral experience, the mind, body, heart connection, deeper questions about life start to emerge. There are 3 foundational sessions. Each one builds on the other, so they're all essential. There isn't one that should be skipped. Students really need to understand the scientific basis of why this method works. And obviously, teachers who use it. The content can be as sophisticated or as simplistic as a teacher chooses, depending on the level of the audience. So part 1 is about connection. Human beings are hardwired for connection. It is our natural state. I use simple images to demonstrate that connection is rooted in nature. This is very logical to students. This is just one example of schooling fish. They stay together for social reasons, to protect themselves from predators, improve foraging, and swim more efficiently. Of course, there's other examples in natures of single species and mutualistic relationships as well. There's many species of sharks, for example, and pilot fish that have that symbiotic relationship. Here is another example from the macrocosm to the micro. There's millions of examples in connection in nature that can be seen. As you're looking at what you're looking at here is mycorrhizal fungal mycelia that connects 2 or more plants. In this case, it's Douglas fir trees. It's a network in which some nodes or hubs have higher degree of connectivity. You'll see a similar image shortly showing social and emotional networks among people. Other examples students can easily relate to are the integral dependent relationship of our own body systems, skeletal, circulatory, etc. And as I noted earlier, connection is rooted in nature. It's a law of nature, as Dr. Tanner pointed out to us yesterday in her presentation. It's a natural tendency of human beings to want to connect to other human beings. Part 2 consists of influence of the environment. It's most important for students to understand that each person is an amalgamation of everything that they are exposed to, that this is what defines who they are. They are not as self-defined as they think. So my objective is to provide them with tools and behaviors so that they understand with what is shaping their lives at every level: emotional, mental, physical, even spiritual. This is just one of the many experts in the field of social and behavioral networks, Albert Laszlo Barazzi, as a leading expert. Others are Duncan Watts, author of 6 Degrees, A Science of the Connected Age. One of my favorite is Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, authors of Connected, The Surprising Power of Social Networks and How They Shape Our Lives. This is where things get particularly interesting for students. Duncan shows in his book that we are no more than 6 degrees of separation from any person on the planet. Christakis and Fowler, from a 30-year Framingham heart study, show that we are no more than 3 degrees apart from any other person on the planet. And Easley and Kleinberg, authors of Networks, Crowds, and Markets, Reasoning About a Highly Connected World, elaborate on the cascading effect of emotional contagion. Students become highly attentive when I explain that what they think, say, do, and feel affects a friend of a friend of a friend following the 3 degrees rule of separation, someone that they don't even know at that 3rd degree affects them, and they are affecting others to that same degree. They are affecting complete strangers through their emotional and mental states. Most students can relate to this phenomenon by their familiarity with the butterfly effect. One class actually experimented with taking, it's an activity wave of compliments activity back to their home school. They complimented everyone they encountered in the halls, whether they knew them or not. And my students said as a result, the mood of the entire school was highly elevated just through this simple exercise and this principle of emotional contagion. One study comes from the Ash experiment at Swarthmore College in 1951. It's a classic experiment in social psychology. There was one naive participant and 7 Confederates. Students were asked which line, A, B, or C, was the same length as the target line. The naive participant answered last. In 12 out of 18 trials, a Confederate gave the wrong answer, conforming to the majority view. So students are able to see how instantaneous influence of the environment is. Other studies come from the aspect of mirror neurons, starting with Donald Hebb, the pioneer of neuropsychology. Hebb's rule, cells that fire together, wire together, is a pretty well-known rule. It's the most mentioned principle in psychobiology or behavioral science. Christakis and Fowler showed through this aspect of mirror neurons how unconscious mimicking occurs everywhere, where we're constantly melding our emotional states with those around us without even engaging with that other person. Whatever state gets introduced into the network gets amplified, very similar to Easley and Kleinberg's findings. And from Barsad's study, positive emotional contagion group members experience improved cooperation, decreased conflict, and increased perceived task performance. Also from Dr. Bradbury, co-founder of Emotional Intelligence 2.0, points to rodent studies that show that stress can have a lasting negative impact on the brain. Exposure to even a few days of stress compromises the effectiveness of the neurons in the hippocampus, an important area of the brain responsible for reasoning and memory. Weeks of stress cause reversible damage to neuronal dendrites. Those are the small arms that neurons use to communicate with each other. Yet, months of stress can permanently destroy the neurons in the brain. I'll repeat that. Months of stress can permanently destroy the neurons in the brain. In other words, they do not grow back. The science makes a much stronger impression on my students than telling them choose your friends wisely, which is true, or you're known by the company you keep. They start to formulate their own scrutinies and assessments of who is in their environment and what they're being influenced by just by sharing the science. Part 3 is critical. After sharing the research and science with students on how they're being constantly bombarded by negativity, they need to know what kind of tools they have available to them so that they can effectively create a positive environment, an optimal environment. First, I discuss habit formation and the importance of forming 3 habits that have been proven to increase happiness, life satisfaction, and success. Their first one is practicing the golden rule. It is a tenet of several major world religions, as you can see in the sphere here. Just a few examples, I won't cover them all. Christianity, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Islam, to the left of the cross at the top of the circle. No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. And to the right of the cross, Hinduism. This is the sum of duty. Do not unto others that which you would not have them do unto you. So my point, I don't introduce religion just simply to show that this is the belief system of many major world religions, is be kind to your neighbor, in so many words. A second most powerful habit for life satisfaction and happiness is to emit gratitude. Research shows that gratitude literally rewires your brain to be happier. One course I taught was a happiness course at Jefferson Community College, and two women who came to the course, they were looking for other tools to be even happier. Throughout the day, they would make a list of all the things they were grateful for, and at the end of the day, they called each other and shared their top three. It was a powerful addition to the course. It's a small example, personal example, yet there are at least hundreds of different studies on gratitude and how it helps to reshape our perception and our view of the world and increase that level of happiness. All the research I do, by the way, I share with follow-up activities, typically a game, always with an intended purpose, and focused questions after that activity. Students are having fun, they love the activities, they love the games, yet they know that there's something that I see that the class needs. That's why I choose that game, and that's why I introduce the debriefing questions. So I'll talk about that shortly. The third habit I encourage students to use is to utilize CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. In short, it's passing one's thoughts through a supportive environment that provides perspective and leads to more positive, at least less damaging emotions, and in turn, more favorable actions. And this comes from classical psychology. Students are at an age when they're feeling self-conscious, also more withdrawn after COVID lockdowns, being isolated physically, mentally, and emotionally. By providing them strategies to build a supportive social circle where they feel safe, they'll be more likely to open up to others in their circle and less likely to get stuck in circuitous negative thoughts. I introduce this as a tool to encourage them to build their own supportive environment. I should say I don't practice CBT in the classroom. I'm not a psychologist. I don't pretend to be. I just introduce this as one tool that they can use to take control over their environment and build an optimal environment. Many of these habits and qualities are ones I encourage them to seek out and their friends and the people around them. So their influence in the most positive way and a reciprocal way of how they are trying to influence the environment as well. So even with these tools and the research that I share with students, even with these few habits, they still feel overwhelmed and ask how they can create this environment considering the amount of negativity they're exposed to nearly every day of their lives. The key is the 10% factor. Scientists at Rensselaer Polytech Institute have found that when just 10% of a population hold an unshakable belief, their belief will always be adopted by the rest of society. Greater than 10%, this belief spreads like wildfire. Almost every student experiences this in at least one of their classes. We're in a class of, say, 20 students. If just 2 students are disruptive, it can throw off the entire class. So this makes sense to them. They see examples of this in school. The knowledge of this 10% tipping point gives students the ability, the power to shape their social environment by having others adopt the same positive behaviors and habits that they themselves have initiated. So far, the research I covered opens the minds of students and engages the body through connection activities. They need to experience the information, not just hear the lecture and be exposed to the studies and the research, but they need to experience it on their flesh. That's why the connection activities are so important. I don't delve into that aspect in this presentation. There's several books on connection and icebreaker activities. The connection circles are the most powerful aspect of the method where students experience the heart and mind integration. It is a place where students really open up to each other and over time begin to develop a high level of sensitivity to one another. And there's a few basic rules. They're very simply stated, and there's no wiggle room. I personally don't sit in the circles. I teach 11th and 12th grade primarily. If I do have a group that's not staying focused, I will just pull up a chair and very nonchalantly introduce myself into the circle just to establish that flow again. I find if I'm sitting in the circles, all eyes are on me. It's teacher-student response. That's what they're used to. I do listen in and take a pulse on what's happening in the circles. They're very revealing, as well as those connection games. Very interesting to see what leaders emerge in the classroom, the reticent students, and so on. Before I move on to Soul, one other thing I do want to mention about the circles, why they're so effective. And students readily gravitate to them. They ask me for them. Are we going to get into the circle? Say, are we going to play games and have some debriefing questions? Has everything to do with the social brain. In his book, Lieberman discusses a social brain and what students think about most, ages 13 to 19, when the social brain is the most active. It's their social life. It's what they need. It's what they crave. Academics in school is not enough. The connection circles and this entire method fills that gap. And I see I'm just about at my time. These questions emerge as a result of the circles. I don't introduce them. It's something that wells up from the hearts and the curiosity of the students. And I have several references. There are several other studies, a lot more research in my book. I wrote this book with teachers in mind, teachers that don't have a lot of time. I don't know if you can see me. It's a fairly thin book following Edgar Allan Poe's rules for a great short story. Can be read within 2 hours, within one setting, and all the elements are wrought to produce an overall effect. And the effect is heart and soul connection for my students. So in summary, when students are able to develop close relationships, discover where they fit in, and find meaning in their lives, they will have hope for the future. I'm very emotional about this topic. It is I'm very passionate about it. And I'm so grateful to have shared what I've discovered and share a bit about my students as well. So thank you, everyone. I'll be very happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much, Mary. That's such an eye-opening presentation. And it's just, I related to you because when my daughter was 16 and I said that you had life and I have no life, and now she's 25, so that's past, but I totally understand, teenage years, it's really, it's not easy. If we have any questions for Mary, please.
Yes, we do. And again, has been, as you can all see, such a delight to work in this area of integral education with Mary Pennock. The first question, Mary, is how...
Kathy, I'm sorry, you just muted. Your mic.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
How well does this method work with different age groups? Can you please give us an example?
Yes, I work primarily with 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Although with a group of other professionals, we have visited senior living homes. And what was most eye-opening about that age is that some of the residents said, I've seen you come, I've passed you so many times in the elevator or in the lounge, and I've never met you. How wonderful is this? To sit face to face, have a conversation, and know who the other residents are and become friends. And many of them crave intellectual conversations. Retired professionals, a range of different types of backgrounds, and they really crave for that level of connection. So works tremendously well. Another example at Hillel, this was also very eye-opening. This was for a Jewish leadership student body. And I thought, oh, very outgoing, very social, well-spoken students. That's who I was preparing to meet with. And this one girl was hesitant to speak. And I said, it's okay if you want to pass. She said, no, I'm just so surprised. I have never, this was a junior in college, I've never answered a question in any class. I said, oh, why is that? And I was never called on. So it was the first time she had actually spoken in the classroom. Very eye-opening for me. This method works from birth to the most senior age, all ages.
Mary, thank you. Another question. What do you think prevents students from being engaged at school?
Definitely it's complex. I'll mention one factor that I'm familiar with from my research. Catherine Price studied cell phone use over the course of 3 years. And in her article, I believe the title is Cell Phones, the New Addiction. It's greatly disrupting students' ability to think, because upon awakening, we're in a theta alpha state. It's a very highly suggestive state. And for students, and I've seen this in adults as well, if the first thing they do is they grab their cell phone, all the likes and the shares and whatever they're clicking on releases dopamine, and it's rewiring the brain to become addicted to that dopamine effect. When students don't have their cell phone, they go through withdrawal. I see anxiety, fidgetiness. I don't allow cell phones. I'm not feeding into that addiction. They bring them to school, but they have to put them away during instruction. I know there's different views on that, and I appreciate those. Some work very well. And what I'm also noticing, students can't retain longer bites of information. They're used to snippets. Click, get this, click, get that, even of mice and men. Unit I was teaching to seniors, they couldn't remember one day to the next. This major characteristics, it's a novella. Probably most of you are familiar with of Mice and Men. It's not a complex text. There's a few main characters, and they couldn't remember. Taking notes, study guides. I think it's because they're used to just quick little bites of information, but the cell phones are disrupting that theta alpha state. And I think that's a huge factor based on what I've read from Catherine Price. I'm not an expert on that, but her work is fascinating.
Oksana, do we have time for one more question for Mary?
Well, do we have time for one more question? Yes. Okay.
All right. The question is, Mary, what technique helps students move beyond personal self-improvement to feeling part of a larger whole?
Well, I would say right at the baseline, there's 2 rules for me as a teacher to help that progression and development. First is do no harm. I'm very, very sensitive to who's in that circle, who's in my classroom, who's an adult audience. I would never ask a student Where's your favorite place to go on vacation, or even favorite food? I work at a Title I school. Some students are struggling to get food at home. The culinary arts department provides meals as much as they can to some of our students. That automatically would put that student in an uncomfortable situation, and they will not trust being in those circles. So first rule, ultimate sensitivity to the audience, do no harm. And the other is to make no assumptions. I didn't verbalize that. I made an assumption when I went to Hillel at Hamilton College leadership group. And the one woman never answered a question in a class. So I never assume anything about my audience until I really get to know them. That way they feel safe. They feel secure. If that circle is not safe, then it's upward battle. They may never feel safe. So then it's a progression. The circles need to be used throughout the curriculum. It's not just 3 sessions and we're done. It's completely integral. And I encourage families to use the book, school administrators, a lot of great tools for families for deepening relationships or building relationship if there aren't strong relationships there. Thank you for those questions, Kathy. Those are great.
Thank you very much, Mary. That's such a great information. And I'm not gonna look at my phone in the morning anymore. Thank you. And we have a link to Mary's book in the chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.